Well, Michael, this episode of Select and Reflect might be coming to you a little late today because I've had issues with the new laptop I've been trying to get to grips with. And I think I done a good job, but maybe we'll still be having some ways to go. But at least I haven't killed someone, like Alec Baldwin did.
Yes, that's going to be my excuse for anything I ever do now. Like, well, at least I haven't killed someone.
Yeah, that's a good transition, though, right?
It was good. Yeah.
No, I mean, obviously it's sad that the person died, but
yeah,
Alec Baldwin killed someone.
Did you also immediately look up the person's the person who died's IMDb credits to make sure that they weren't actually behind any films you enjoyed?
No, I didn't.
Okay, well, good news is they didn't really.
So you did.
I saw a tweet that was like, "Oh, we lost a brilliant artist," and I looked, and it was like a bunch of films I've never heard of. So maybe they were a brilliant artist, but no one ever. No, I mean, it's obviously anybody dying sad, but it's just like when you hear, director of photography killed, you think to yourself, "Oh no, what if it was somebody important?"
Wow, this is why Michael's a fake socialist, because he that every little part of the production, right, of the movies, it matters. The little people, they matter, who don't get all the credit, who have to have fucking $1 million actors like fire fake fucking guns at them, they matter. And so I wonder if Rust, which is the movie they were working on, is going to be released. I doubt it's going to be released now. Somehow I think they're going to cut production of that pretty soon. But
you know what they say though, Luke? Rust in peace.
Okay, maybe a bit tasteless, but we'll go with it.
Hello and welcome to Select and Reflect, the movie review podcast where we look at films that have come out in the near and distant past. We give them a couple of watches and evaluate them beyond first impressions. I'm your host Michael, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Luke. And this week we are continuing Spooktober, very close to Halloween, considering this is only the third installment of Spooktober out of 4. And we are going to be looking at what's it called? Friday the 13th, the first Friday the 13th. And which, just because it's a slasher film, some might say that it was a slasher film we probably should have done last year when it was actually the anniversary. But who's to blame for that decision to not do that? Who knows? I would just say that it just worked out that way, completely passively. A bit like Alec Baldwin shooting that person. Anyway.
That's a good comparison, yeah.
Thank you.
I think we should stop referencing that, to be honest.
Yes. Yeah. Anyway, basically, unless Rust does come out and we do. But then we should reference it.
I don't think it's going to come out, I said. But anyway,
anyway, look, wait and tell us a thing or two about a film with more murder. Friday the 13th.
Sure thing, Michael. So, Friday the 13th is a 1980 American independent slasher film produced and directed by Sean Cunningham, written by Victor Miller, and starring Betsy Palmer, Adrienne King, Harry Crosby, Laurie Bartram, Mark Nelson, Janine Taylor, Robbie Morgan, and Kevin Bacon. Did you get that, Michael?
Oh yeah, I did recognise. I didn't. I thought, it's Kevin Bacon, but I wasn't confident because everyone in the 80s looked the same.
I could tell it was Kevin Bacon.
I'm 80s racist. I think everyone in the 80s looked the same.
Well, the thing is, he's got that very noticeable nose.
Yeah. Yes, I did think I recognised his nose. It's kind of piggy.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is appropriate because his name is Bacon.
Yes, it all works out. So can you guess what day? When was this released, Michael?
I mean, I'm surely not Friday the 13th.
I mean, no, it's probably released on a Friday, like most.
Oh, okay, yeah. But, I mean, I'm just thinking. So, was it released completely miles apart from Halloween?
It was released in May. Yeah. And guess what date in May?
May 4th.
May the 9th. So I don't know why you would release a horror movie in May, and I don't understand also why, if you were going to do it in May, you wouldn't just release it on the 13th of okay, we're releasing this movie in July, but guess what? There's a Friday the 13th in July, so it makes sense. Good for marketing and all that. But yeah, this was on May the 9th. So yeah,
there's no reason for that.
I know, but I mean, it didn't really affect it. Can you guess the budget, Michael?
What the fuck was you said noise? Independent. I wish I could remember how much Halloween was, because I felt like what I would do is I would cut whatever the budget for Halloween was in half, based on the logic that this was independent. I mean, it looks pretty cheap. 1 million?
Half that.
Yeah, okay.
500,
yeah.
Yeah, and $50,000. So, yeah, very, very cheap. But what about the box office, Michael?
Well, I'm guessing it was successful, but you run into, obviously they made loads, but you run into the issue that it could have made not very much at all and still been successful. A lot of the time when I guess like very high off a very low budget, you say, well, that would be insane. So I'm going to guess like not, I mean, like for example, if it made in the tens of millions, that's very good. I mean, maybe it made 30 million?
It made 60.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
59.
Yeah, it is a great return.
Yeah, $59.8 million, which of course is like you say, a massive return, 100 times its budget back. And so, yeah, release it on May the 9th, release it in fucking January. Yeah. Who cares, really?
Yeah.
Nothing matters anymore.
When I said if it made tens of million, I was about to say 100 million, but I thought if I said 100 million, you would berate me. You would go, don't be fucking stupid, Michael. As if this movie would make 100 million, just because, obviously it was such a low budget and all that kind of stuff, and it just seemed excessive.
To be fair, yeah.
But to be honest, it was pretty close with 60 million. Well, it's pretty close.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it's close, but yeah. Anyway, so, okay, there we go. A very successful independent horror movie. Michael, did you like this?
I thought this film was okay, and then not very good, and then kind of all right. In those actually not in equal measure. I think overall there was a lot of stuff which I just thought was very stupid. I think maybe on balance I'd say I did think this film was average, but definitely didn't like it. And I might find myself at the end convincing myself that it was slightly less than average, and I don't think I'm likely to come to the conclusion it was slightly better than average.
Well, I think it was good in parts, but overall, I mean, I just sit back and I can't believe that this spawned such a massive franchise. How many movies? 11 movies? It's like, that is incredible to me. That this is the origin. I mean, obviously it's not the best Friday the 13th movie, and of course it made a bunch of money, so they were doing sequels, and of course the sequels were probably better, and then the better sequels maybe launched all these other movies that happened afterwards. But really, Michael, this movie, I mean, it's below average, to be honest. That's what I'd say for a horror movie, or just maybe a movie in general. And yeah, I think it's got some decent moments, but overall, it's just quite a lackluster movie, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be interested to see what our precise beefs are. But on the subject of precise beefs, do you have any nitpicks?
I do.
Yeah, okay. I've got 2. How many have you got?
I've got 1.
Okay, in that case, you can go first.
We didn't review this movie for its 40-year anniversary.
Is that your one nitpick?
That is my one nitpick.
Okay,
which you already covered, but go on.
Yeah, I've got 2 nitpicks. One's incredibly unkind, like whatever. And then the other one's like quite a substantial one, but I still decided to put it as a nitpick because I didn't think it was. So I'd say it's on the substantial end nitpick. So the first one's like very minor, but I don't even know why they would run the generators during the night, because I thought like emergency generators were, for kind of emergencies. And it just seems like obviously they're all going to bed and like, oh, the generator's out. I was like, surely, you don't want to just have the generator running all night using up all of your emergency fuel. Just seems, I'm not an expert on camping. It just seemed wrong to me. But more substantial one, it sure is convenient that the blood didn't soak through at any point sooner. Otherwise, he would have easily just stood up and identified the killer under his bed. Now, I'm of course referring to when I think it's Kevin Bacon, I might be getting my people confused, is banging that broad in the bunk bed, and there's somebody who's had his throat cut on top of him. Meanwhile, we find out, of course, the killer is under his bed. So those are the dynamics in play. And what happens is the woman leaves, and the blood drips onto his face, and then the woman, maybe you could say she heard the blood splat. She's like, oh, I've got to stab him now. The thing is, if that blood would have soaked through at any point sooner, he would have noticed it and gone and been able to just kind of silently, or, stand up very quickly. She probably wouldn't have had time to react. And suddenly, she's completely screwed. Like, at that point, she's under the bed.
Sorry, what do you mean the blood soaked through earlier?
The mattress. Because obviously...
So wouldn't the same thing just happen, but earlier?
Well, no, because here's what I'm thinking. I guess, okay, 2 things. 1, I think he would have seen it first, so it's a bit, I guess part of it because he didn't see it. But 2, okay. I feel like if it was happening while they were banging, he could realistically have noticed it and kind of, reacted a bit more actively. I feel like the fact it was post-sex means he was more relaxed, so he didn't react as quickly. I do maintain that.
Well, I mean, he's still. I think this is a dumb nitpick. I'm just going to say. I think it's my best. I think it's the fucking shittiest thing I've ever heard in my entire life.
This is really funny because I literally said I think it's like this is such like this is barely even a nitpick for me. Like this is. I mean, this was on the verge of something that actively annoyed me in the film.
So you're saying if it happened during sex, he would be like, what's this? Wait, is that drip? And then. So your nitpick is, it's not really a nitpick. It's like what would have happened is probably the killer who's still under the bed would have still knifed Kevin Bacon, and then
either way, then
his girlfriend,
the woman would have been aware. So it just doesn't. As far as her stealth mission is concerned, she's pretty screwed at that point. She kills this one guy, but she can't really get away from the rest of the people. So even if she kills Kevin Bacon, which I mean, if I'm going to say anything else, it would just be that I think the whole thing of Kevin Bacon.
I mean, she I don't know why she's screwed. She kills 2 people. That's decent for her. That's a good night.
Yeah, I mean, I know. I mean, I guess I'm saying like I assume her goal was a murder spree. So I'm just saying.
Oh yeah, but her goal is to kill as many people as possible. But you could still kill 2 people. One of them, three at this point. One of them is having sex. Like that fulfills your like revenge fantasy because of course that's why you do this shit. Oh, that's a great night for you. You take that every day of the week. So no, this nitpick is complete bullshit. And
I'm still standing by it. You're not changing my mind on this one,
because you're a very stubborn person.
Yeah, I am stubborn, a bit like the killer. But I mean, the thing is, like,
you know what, a bit like a killer. If I had to describe Mrs. Voorhees as one word, it would be stubborn.
Yes, I mean, no. The thing is, like, I do think just like her plan of kill somebody such that there's going to be blood, leave him on the top bunk, and then hide under the bed. It just seems like it's very likely to create a situation where somebody could be alerted to your presence under the bed.
And then you kill them.
But I just think, like, are you really that confident in your ability to just knife someone through a bed immediately before they get up?
Well, clearly she was, because she did. So clearly she was feeling herself, Michael. She was confident that she could do that. She's killed 2 other people, and not just today, or when the movie was taking place earlier on, like a few years ago. She's got it in her. I think you just need to get off this ledge, man. Just come back and stop focusing on this.
It just, I don't know. It just seems, it's fine. Anyway, let's talk about what's the plot, Luke.
Oh, I just wanted to point out. I mean, anyone who knows about Friday the 13th. You'll know how funny this is. There's the Friday the 13th movie called The Final Chapter. Then there are 3 more movies after that in the next 5 years. Like it's not like they had a reboot after like 10 years. Within the next 5 years, they produced 3 more.
Yeah, I think anyone who does that should be killed. Okay. I think genuinely, like doing that nonsense of The Final Chapter. They do that for TV shows too. It's just piss off.
Okay.
Don't lie to me.
Anyway, so let's talk about the concept, Michael. As a camp counselor myself, this movie hits close to home because I wanted to get killed too. Yeah. But the movie does it. Here's what I was interested in: does the movie have anything to do with the date? And the answer is pretty much no. Apparently, it has more to do with the fact that there's a full moon. There's loads of shots towards the full moon.
Yeah.
So you think about it. You call this movie Friday the 13th. Does it have anything really to do with Friday the 13th? Apparently, it's Jason's birthday. But you don't, that's what his mother said, of course, but you don't realise that until the end of the movie. And if that was incorporated into the plot somewhere, that'd be good. Or, when were the 2 camp counsellors killed? 40 years ago. Sorry, not 40 years ago, because that's how long the movie was. What was it, 58? So it would have been 22 years ago. When that happened, were they killed on Friday the 13th? Because I don't remember anyone saying that.
Yeah, they really, definitely they should have established that Friday the 13th was the trend, or like, that was, It was always happening on Friday the 13th, because I think basically it does seem coincidental maybe this happens to all occur on Friday the 13th.
Yeah, maybe if you go back and look at the calendars from 1957 and 58, we go, there's a Friday the 13th in summer, so that's when the 2 incidents happened. But...
And obviously everybody knows when the Friday the 13th were 22 years before, I can always remember the Friday the 13th of 1998,
but 1999. That's the thing though, it should have been like mentioned more, the fact that this movie, it's nothing really to do with Friday the 13th really. Again, like there's more references to the fact that there's a full moon, and that means when the full moon people are killing each other, and all of that shit. But so young adults and teenagers getting killed while having sex, and of course the difference compared to Halloween it's happening at a campsite. So you can say that's more haunted than a street in suburbia, I guess, like Halloween. But I do like the element of suburbia being creepy, at Halloween, in the movie Halloween.
Because most people aren't in campsites, so it's not scary.
I guess so. Yeah, I mean, obviously nobody's at campsites in Halloween, but yeah, the setting is more logical in terms of like this abandoned campsite and some murders. Yeah, it's a logical place to set a horror movie. But the eeriness of suburbia. Again, I've talked about that. That's something I really like about the original Halloween. That's why I do rate it quite highly, certainly compared to you. But yeah, I think this does make sense though. Like if you're gonna have a set horror movie here, it does make sense for a setting.
Also, I mean, it allows for kind of less, I guess, convenience in terms of keeping the story contained. It's kind of like, I feel like if you're writing a horror movie, obviously it's kind of good to have fewer situations where things have to be, like I say, kind of convenient in terms of like, oh, isn't it convenient that I'm thinking back to the earlier Halloween film where isn't it convenient Jamie Lee Curtis happens to live in a house that's really far away from everyone else, so Michael Myers attacking them means they're completely on their own. Like it's always the people. There's never any next door neighbors in these films getting involved. But in this case, it doesn't matter. It doesn't, there's nothing about it it's like, oh, it makes sense that these counselors are just out there completely stranded. So it's kind of, it gives that sense of isolation without any sense of like, oh, why are they completely isolated?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. Again, it's logical. That's the best you can say about it. It does make sense to set this horror movie here. So let's get into the plot. It follows a group of teenage camp counselors who are murdered one by one by an unknown killer while attempting to reopen an abandoned summer camp. So, this killer, of course, kills off these teenagers one by one, or young adults, who cares, until there is a reveal at the end in terms of who is the killer. And the motivation behind the killer, we'll get to that later. But yeah, it's a movie that just really doesn't try to do anything complicated at all with the plot. It's a very repetitive thing you got going on here. Just the killer isolates somebody, then kills them, and then goes on to the next teenager and kills them, and they keep doing that until they're down to just the last girl. And it does feel like Michael, you used to see these kind of products advertised on TV, like build your own, like I don't know what can you think
Sunday.
Of build your own Sunday. What?
Oh, I mean, like the ice cream sundae. I mean,
oh, yes, that makes sense.
I don't know, yeah.
Yes.
Or I was also thinking one time we got a make your own hot chocolate kit, which I think is stupid.
Make your own hot chocolate. There you go. That's perfect. That's what I want. So something like that. But if this was a movie, it would have come out of like if there was a build your own horror movie game, or like box set.
Oh yeah.
And this is and you made this like make your very own horror movie. All right, we're going to have these teenagers, and some of them are going to be having sex. Some of them are just going to be on their own, and this killer's going to kill them. And it's going to happen one by one, and it's going to be dark, and it's going to be mysterious.
It's like a template.
Yeah, exactly, and that's why we talked about it. Well, I said at the beginning it did feel quite lackluster.
Yeah. Well, I think maybe actually the fact it kind of works like that is possibly why it's so successful. Because I guess people thought to themselves, hey, you could do a lot with these people at a campsite. Like there's a lot, maybe people saw this premise now, like, oh, there's a lot you can do with that, so we might as well just keep it going. That's like possibly an explanation. Maybe like all of the films have actually been quite disappointing, but it just turns out that like people are always just like, you know what, I want to have a go at writing a camp murder story. Every single time I say camp, I feel like I'm talking about gay people. Like, it's just always this joke in the back of my head. When you said camp counselor, I expect you to go, as a camp counselor, I thought this film was fabulous.
I see. No, we're not on the Pope is gay, so no, unfortunately. Anyway, so let's get into the movie. So in 1958, at Camp Crystal Lake, counselors Barry Jackson and Claudette Hayes sneak inside a storage cabin to have sex, where an unknown assailant murders them. So clearly, off the bat, they're an authority figure of some kind. So I guess it does give it away somewhat because
they react like scared.
Yeah, because if it was like if it was an old like well, we'll get into the whodunit thing. There isn't really a whodunit in this movie, like a mystery, which it makes the movie worse. But you are thinking like, who could it be? It's like, well, it's probably not a kid, obviously, so that rules that out. It's probably not someone who's a fellow camp counselor. Because they'd be like, hey, what the fuck are you doing? You perving on us or whatever?
Yeah, and it's obviously got to be someone they know because they react like as if they know the person.
Yeah, so it gives it away. So basically, there was maybe a case of, it could be fucking what's he called? Who's the guy who's setting up the camp?
You mean the mustache guy?
Yeah, the mustache guy. It's
Yeah,
like,
mustache guy.
maybe it's going to be him at the start. Like, maybe it's going to be him who's the killer. But obviously, if you think about it, back to the first kill, it's like, well, no, it can't be him because he'd be very young, at that time. So yeah.
Also, you don't expect it to be a little kid because obviously we've all seen Halloween. And we're like, well, they wouldn't just steal the kid murdering somebody in the prologue thing, would they? They'd get sued.
Yeah, no, they definitely wouldn't steal anything from Halloween.
No, good.
Yeah, so of course, right. These kids go to this camp in the woods, and basically, they're just chilling. They're just doing all this kid stuff. Kids, they're fixing up the camp. They're messing around, all that shit. And then so the first real, I guess, introduction to the scariness. Well, of course, like people say to the kids as they're going into the camp, "Oh, this place
you're gonna get got."
Yeah, all of that shit. But then when the first time it actually happens, regardless of what the townspeople say, is when a cop pulls up and asks about Ralph.
Yes.
Yeah, the town crazy. And I was like, oh, they're gonna think it's Ralph. They're gonna suspect Ralph is doing the killings, and that's gonna be that's gonna be a plot thread.
The red herring.
Yes, well, literally, he is a red herring. But my disappointment came in the next scene. He's revealed as a red herring.
Yeah,
it's like, oh, who's this Ralph guy? Oh, there he is. He's warning them. Okay, you could have maybe, I don't know, done that a bit later than just like immediately after, because it kind of ruins the suspense.
Yeah, he is a bit pointless. Like, it kind of just feels like a thing that happens in the film without any, like, sense of... It doesn't really achieve very much narratively.
It could have if you, like, give a bit of time. You set up, this Ralph guy, he's a bit of a weirdo. And then, immediately he's in the cupboard. Okay. Do that, like, 20 minutes later. Or, after the first few murders. And it's like, okay, that could be interesting. But they again, just a very, very simple movie. This red herring. Well, we've got this red herring, and now it's gone. So the killing, I think, unless people suspect it could be him later on, but then I think people would, like, for example, the mustache guy who runs the camp. His reaction would be, "Oh, fucking hell, Ralph, what are you doing here?" Like he'd give it away, because of the fact that he's a weirdo. Anyway, so. The killing, here's the thing, Michael. I think the killing generally starts too early. So you have this girl called Annie.
Yeah.
She dies.
She's obviously introduced right at the beginning. Yeah. She's the person through whom we're introduced.
Yeah, exactly. Thing. And surely she should be one of the last people alive then, you'd think. But apparently not. But anyway, she dies so quickly. We hardly get to know her at all. And, like, I was thinking, you get them telling, scary stories at dinner or something. I don't know. Like, and it's like, I guess already she's dead, and that's the thing, it happens like in broad daylight, and she's just running and tripping, and it's like, okay, well, this isn't great, is it? That was my opinion of that. What do you think?
Yeah, so I had kind of more mixed feelings about it. On the one hand, I did think it was kind of, I'm going to use this phrase, but in a non-memey way. It is kind of a bit of a, like, subversing expectations thing in a way where, like, it's a lot like... it's different from Psycho. It's not quite as subverted as Psycho, where you have literally half the film with somebody and then they just die. But it's kind of like you get introduced as character, you assume she's going to be the main character, and then she just dies. And you could say it's kind of like so it's anyone could die. It's kind of like, it's not as formulaic. Because, kind of in a way, obviously formulas do work, and I don't want to go full on like Shyamalan, but you could say if, like, it's always just the main character's the last one to die, in a way that's kind of predictable. It's not always terrible, but it's just...
Does it make it more interesting, though?
Well, I will say, I actually thought to myself, like...
And I'm talking about not so much also her dying, it's like the killing starts way too early.
Yeah. I was kind of thinking to myself, what might have been good is if, like, they implied her death in some way, like, maybe just had her get, like, literally... have her just get into the person's van. Like, maybe, for example, you're mentioning them telling scary stories. I kind of imagine to myself, like, maybe there's a scene where the people who are already at the camp are telling a scary story about a killer who attacks people, and then that's kind of interspliced with Annie getting into this stranger's car, and then we just see her drive off, and it's like the implication. And then maybe later on, they find her dead body, and it's like, she died. That would be, I think, a bit more interesting.
Yeah, one of the girl at the end finds her dead body, just... and we don't know what happened to her. And we see, like, the car zoom past the Camp Crystal Lake. Again, just stuff that makes it more...
a bit more implication.
Yeah, more interesting, I guess, because this is just like a one-trick pony of a movie. It's like, it's such a thin plot that, okay, this is our only idea. Like, this teenager gets killed, so we're going to have her get killed now. And then 20 minutes later, another death. 20 minutes later, another death. And then it speeds up at the end. We get a death every 10 minutes, etc. It's just like there's no thought given really, which is disappointing. Or what you could happen, and this is another idea. Annie, like, she survives, and then she she's lost in the woods, and only a few hours later she finds the camp, and it's in the middle of the killing spree, and basically she goes to a character like who doesn't know what's going on, and she like screams, and she's like very upset and everything. And like,
that's when they realize that's when shit gets real.
Something like that. You could do it something a bit differently there. But that's it's just a one-trick pony, and it's not that great if you've only got one trick.
I mean, I was just going to agree with that it is like so monotonous, and it's just like especially like as soon as the character just breaks away, it's kind of like I mentioned this idea of convenience, and it is like from a writing perspective, as soon as characters get separated, you know exactly why it has happened, and it just comes across as feeling lazy. It's like the film just very obviously wants to separate these characters, and it's like as soon as it happens, like, oh, I know why the script is doing that, so that it can kill this person off. Like it feels very kind of like you can see the cogs of what the film is trying to do turning in a way that's a bit obvious.
It's predictable, and that's why
I did have one positive about a singular murder, because I kind of assume we're not going to go for every single murder.
I was going to say, and I know you nitpicked it, but I did love the reveal of Neddy, the guy who was above Kevin Bacon.
Actually, I didn't dislike the reveal. Actually, I just but no, I think the big positive I actually had was it was something about. It was like the one moment where I was like, oh, that's actually a good thing. It was seeing the hand kind of behind the curtain tentatively. I'm, of course, talking about when the woman's cleaning her teeth, I think. And so this is the woman who doesn't get killed, because obviously there's a woman who does get killed. She gets axed in the face. And then later on, another woman comes in, and it's kind of like you see in the background the hand kind of appear on the corner, and then it disappears. And it's like, I liked that because it was kind of a moment of sort of humanness from the killer. And I was actually thinking, I think that's something I quite like. I think generally speaking, I'm sort of against the whole trope of like the omnicompetent villain killer, because it's always like apart from anything else, I don't like how always at the ends they suddenly turn into a complete buffoon who ends up getting defeated quite easily, like Freddy Krueger in the Home Alone parody. But I liked that idea of like you get a sense of the killer's mind working when it's like you see the hand go around the corner, and then it's like, oh, it disappears, and it's like, oh, she's not really going to do it, she's going to bide her time. And it's kind of, it was the one moment where it was interesting, because like every other moment it's just like she immediately just springs it, not immediately, but she like seems to be completely in control, completely knows what she's doing. But there's one moment it's like she's like, oh, should I? No, I'm not going to. I say she, giving away the killer, but the killer.
I mean, we've already fucking done that, Michael.
I know, yes. But yeah, so I liked that. That was like a moment I was like,
okay,
yes, okay, cool.
Okay, well, that's good. I'm glad you enjoyed that. So, and I think, I didn't enjoy it as much as you, but I can see why you liked it. Kevin Bacon and his girlfriend, of course, die, but nobody knows that they die, and that's the thing. Nobody knows about any of the people who die apart from the last girl, and this is an issue of this movie. There is no aspect of like the whodidit mystery. The first time someone discovers someone dead is right at the end, and I get it. It makes it, I guess, scary if it happens without anyone knowing. It's like these teens getting picked off. It's like they're all so innocent and they don't know what's happening. But is it that fun a concept? I mean, and the fact that we'd say it's a one-trick pony, but then like nobody knows, and then so the first few can die, but after that maybe you mix it up a bit, add in an element of fear in the remaining characters.
That's what I was going to say. You don't see the characters being scared. Like for the majority of the film, the characters aren't actually scared, which isn't very good for a horror film. It's kind of like we as the omnipotent observer know something bad's happening, but literally nobody in the film is ever scared for longer than a few seconds before they get killed.
Do it half and half. Do it like the first few die, and then and also you get to then have this element of this mystery with the characters discussing who could it be. And them throwing out names and so on and so forth, and then you as a viewer are more, because if you're watching this as a viewer, you never really wonder to yourself, oh, I wonder who this could be, because none of the characters discuss it. You have no idea, and that mystery element, we talked about it in Scream last week. That mystery element is inherently interesting, makes the film just more interesting, makes the plot more interesting, because you're thinking about that. But anyway, Mrs. Voorhees, of course, is revealed to be the killer.
Yes.
And you can tell it's her immediately because she's smiling very unsettlingly.
Yeah.
Unsettlingly.
Unsettlingly?
Unsettlingly. as she gets out of her car. So I'm thinking it's probably her.
Yeah.
And I already knew it was her, but I'm thinking, oh yeah, you could probably tell it's her immediately. And to be honest, her motivation, it does make sense. I would have liked to, here's the thing, I would have liked to seen it talked about more throughout the movie, as it does feel like a bit of an afterthought. Hey, remember those deaths at the beginning? Because obviously there's no real reference to them. And there's no reference, oh, this is what happened on Friday the 13th. And, Scott, like, the kids are... Is the main guy called Scott? Am I just making that up?
I don't know, so I'm going to say yes.
Great, well, the mustache guy. Like, he's running the show, the kids are asking mustache guy.
Yeah, Scott sounds familiar.
Yeah, well, basically, you need a scene where the kids are asking him about what happened, 22 years ago, and he's, like, giving the details, like, reluctantly, like, I didn't want to have to tell you this, but I guess I should tell you the whole story. And therefore, it makes what happens seem like less of an afterthought, like her motivation.
By the way, just on the subject of Scott, I do like how he shows up. They have like quite a big thing around him showing up. Like there's quite a chunk of the film dedicated to him being out of, back in town, away from the camp, and then getting back to the camp, and then he just dies instantly as soon as he gets there. That really, I don't know, that I was just like, that seemed pointless. So that's just
It could be Steve. Fuck. What is this guy's name? You. I don't see
Steve's. I mean, if you thought it was Scott, Steve is close to Scott. Anyway, I have some issues with the film while you're busy looking up the name of this guy.
I think it must be Steve Peter Brower, but as Steve Christie.
These are they. Firstly, after they discover I don't know if you could say they discover there's a murder. They discover there's an axe, which should be a reason to be suspicious. It annoys me that they don't start looking for people. They're not like, okay, wait, this could actually be something that's a bit weird. Let's try and get some people together and tell them this weird thing we found. Instead, at which point they'll find evidence, it'll be exciting. It's kind of just like their reaction to it's very boring. And then obviously, even after they discover that, they still decide to split up. So I just wanted to say their reaction, even before Mrs. Voorhees reveals herself, was pretty...
dumb horror stuff. Yeah, I know. But yeah, I do think, if basically... I think going back to Mrs. Voorhees' kid, obviously Jason... Yeah. I think there's a solitary mention of the kid drowning, I think, before she turns up. I mean, it is quite easy to forget about that. And it's just like, oh, yeah. So this that mystery isn't really a mystery. Like, oh, it's all explained. It's like, oh, yeah, all of this stuff happened and they didn't really reference it a lot. I mean, I think back again to Scream last week, we constantly, for the first hour of the movie, there was constant references to what happened last year with... what's she called? Sydney's mother, and that was that was good because it kept you engaged about what was happening, and what led you to wonder what actually happened a year ago, what was happening in this movie. But yeah, I will say this movie, it is really, I guess, saved at the end by this reveal, because this movie is only memorable, I guess, because of Mrs. Voorhees and what happens with Jason jumping out of the water, but we'll get onto that in a bit. But back to the killer. So Miller, who wrote this, was delighted in inventing a serial killer who turned out to be someone's mother, a murderer whose only motivation was the love for her child. I took motherhood and turned it on its head, and I think that was great fun. Mrs. Voorhees was the mother I'd always wanted, a mother who would have killed for her kids. Wow. Okay. Miller wasn't happy about the filmmaker's decision to make Jason Voorhees the killer in the sequels. Jason was dead from the very beginning. He was a victim, not a villain. But there is money to be made, and to be fair, the ending did set it up. So,
you can't disagree with that.
Yeah, and I there is also a thematic thing of not really thematic. Okay, the mother tried. Now Jason Voorhees is going to go on and kill her.
It picks up the mantle. Yeah, I don't know whether or not they actually bring back Mrs. Voorhees at any point in any capacity in the later films. But you feel like at some point they've got to. I will say that the ending did lead to a lot of just moments where you're like, just realizing how stupid the characters are being. Particularly like the number of times. I think it's at least 2. It might even be 3 that she knocks out Mrs. Voorhees and then just ignores her. I can understand not wanting to kill her, but you just think she just runs away. And okay, so the one example that really annoys me is right at the end when she knocks her out and then she just goes down by the lake and just kneels there, and then Mrs. Voorhees comes up behind her and is getting ready to stab her, and it's it's supposed to be tense, but it annoys me because it's I can't really feel any tension when the entire setup for that is the main character being so stupid. Like, it's like if you're going to have a scene where a character literally just like has knocked out the main villain and then just goes and just kneels there and just doesn't pay attention to what's happening around her and then nearly gets stabbed. I can't be there like, oh, I hope she doesn't get stabbed, because it's like, she's an idiot. To be honest, at that point, she deserved to get stabbed. So yeah, they just very much removed any investment I had in, like, when characters don't show any sense of self-preservation in their own actions, it's hard to get invested in, them staying alive.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, that you're kind of encroaching on the scariness.
Oh yeah.
There, I will say.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. You know what? I'll forgive you, Michael, for that. But yeah, I do agree with you somewhat. But yeah, obviously, the reality is, like, she doesn't want to kill this woman.
Yeah.
And then, like, it's like, well, you can't knock her out, so she's just gonna keep coming back. So it's like, yeah, it is a bit farcical. So, well, I guess I'll try to knock you out. I'm just gonna have to kill you then. I'm not just kill you. I'm gonna cut your head off. There we go. Really, really going for it there. Anyway, so let's talk about the final reveal, of course, which is the Jason. Will he come back? Will he come back?
I guess, obviously, I mean, it was interesting. Like, genuinely, it was a moment in the film where it's like, suddenly you're like, oh, that's actually kind of interesting. I mean, it's obviously goofy in its own way and a bit, like, mental to be like, oh, actually, you've got zombie Jason at the end of it. But
do you know who came up with the idea, Michael? Because I'll tell you.
Jamie Lee Curtis.
The idea of Jason appearing at the end of the film was initially not used in the original script. In Miller's final draft, the film ended with Alice merely floating on the lake. Of course, that's what he wanted. Jason was the victim. That's what he wanted to portray. Jason's appearance was suggested by Jamie Lee Curtis.
No,
it was suggested by makeup designer Tom Savini.
Tom Savini.
Tom Savini.
We love him.
Yeah, stated that the whole reason for the cliffhanger at the end was I had just seen Carrie, so we thought that we need a chair jumper like that. And I said, let's bring in Jason. And I will say it's probably the best scare in the movie.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't jump out of my chair, Michael. I don't know about you. But
I'm embarrassed to admit that even on the second watch, when I knew it was coming, to be honest, I think even on the first watch, I was anticipating it because I was like, oh, like, that seems like a kind of scary thing they might do. But the important thing is definitely on the second watch, when I literally knew it was coming, I still was just like, oh.
Wow. But the thing is,
I don't know. It's the noise.
It is a great scare, and the whole concept of him still being in the lake, fucking pulling the girl in at the end elevates this movie. It does elevate this movie quite a bit, because if that didn't happen and you didn't have that concept, this movie would be a lot more forgotten. And I absolutely bet a lot of the reason why the box office revenue was so high is because that's the final scare of the movie. You've just got out the theatre and you're talking to other theatre.
Yeah, it's the thing you remember.
Yeah, it's the thing you remember. It's the last thing you remember. Yeah. And I bet a bunch of people were really scared by that. And then they tell their friends about, oh, it's so scary at the ending, etc., etc. And I think this movie could have been really forgettable without it, because
if it just ends with her on the lake.
Yeah, because I thank God for Tom Savini. We've said it many times, but
I mean, he I guess or maybe you don't. He was the makeup designer on lots of the George Romero zombie films, which of course we reviewed.
Yes.
So clearly he just wanted there to be a zombie. That's his obsession. It's like, I want more zombies.
Well, it's a nice twist at the end, obviously, but we'll talk more about that in Is It Scary? That section. But first, let's go through. This is what I was interested in, the reviews, Michael. So we've got contemporary reviews and the reviews when this movie was released 41 years ago. So a significant number of reviews, this is 41 years ago, criticised the film for its depiction of violence. The Hollywood Reporter derided the film, writing, gruesome violence in which throats are slashed and heads are split open. In realistic detail is the some content of Friday the 13th, a sick and sickening low-budget feature that is being released by Paramount. It's blatant exploitation of the lowest order. Yeah, that was a very common critique.
Yeah,
and it shows how much things are like. We look at this and it's like, the plot, it's quite thin. It's one-trick pony kind of movie, and it's like, oh my god, they fucking slice someone's throat. Oh, how horrible! Exploitation of the lowest order. Oh dear, just incredible how much things have changed in 40 years. It really is. And now you look at those deaths, and some of them are just quite laughable, to be honest, because they're clearly fake. And of course, it's an independent movie 40 years ago, but it's just the passage of time, Michael. Undefeated.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it reminds me of Bart Simpson's famous line at the end of the first Treehouse of Horror, where he, of course, says that The Raven isn't a very scary poem, and Lisa says, oh, back then people were more scared. And Bart says, like the original Friday the 13th. It's pretty tame by today's standards. Yeah. So there we go. Bart had it right.
Absolutely. So yeah, if you want a good laugh, look at those reviews from 1980. But anyway, so contemporary reviews now. So in a 2000 review, critic Kim Newman awarded the film 2 out of 5 stars, referring to it as a pallid Halloween ripoff with a mediocre shock count and a botched ending. When she's talking about, she's talking about the fact that obviously it's like the Benny Hill thing with fucking Alice and Mrs. Voorhees. She is called Alice, right? Because I got that. It is yes. Yeah, Alice isn't good. Give myself credit for that, but if she's talking about that, I agree. As the bodies pile high amongst this testy crowd of horny teens, there remains a vacant hole where something scary should be. Yeah, and I think that's quite true, and we'll get onto that a bit later. In a strange way, the film stands unique amongst all slasher films as the one where the killer is nearly intangible. Jeremiah Kipp reviewed the film in 2009, noting a kind of minimalism at work, eschewing anything special in terms of mood, pacing, character, plot, and tension. Yeah, it's very simple, and that's the thing. We were watching this, and we're like, this is just very, very uncomplicated. Critic Scott Meslow on the film's legacy. Why did it make such a splash? Theories abound, but here's mine. Friday the 13th succeeded because it was brazened enough to steal so many tricks from the many brilliant horror films that came before it. Yeah, I think so. If you combine all of those tropes into a movie, it's like the ultimate Halloween slasher movie. And of course, we're talking, did it steal stuff from Halloween? I mean, it's young kids getting killed by this mysterious slasher. Yeah. It's just a Halloween concept, just in a different setting, really, and a different backstory to the killer. And of course, there's more differences, but it's just, that's what I was thinking when I was watching this. It's like, and as you could probably guess by my comments beforehand, it's just very formulaic. I think you've used that word as well. Yes. And it's no surprising that if that is a critique, people are going to accuse it of ripping off previous horror movies. And I think to some extent, you could argue that was correct. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, in many ways, I suppose actually another reason why maybe the film is successful is just because it's such a it's just such a blank slate. It's kind of like, you want to make a slasher film, just take the film that's literally just derivative of lots of other slasher films. So I mean, maybe that's part of it as well. Obviously, with maybe you could say other kind of, I mean, for example, especially Nightmare on Elm Street, that has a very specific constraint in terms of what can happen in it. Whereas this film, it's like it doesn't really have anything apart from just generic slasher villain stuff, or slasher horror stuff. So you can just make any generic slasher film and call it a Friday the 13th film, and boom, there's your brand recognition. So yeah, it does seem like it's intentionally, it's like Keir Starmer. Just not really having a personality.
It's like Keir Starmer. You heard it here first. Yes. Yeah, so Scott Meslow of The Week reviewed the film in 2015, assessing its original critical reception in a contemporary context. Before it became an absurdly profiled franchise, Friday the 13th was a cynical, one-off attempt to make a fast buck on a sleazy slasher movie that accidentally ended up spawning a decade-spanning, multi-million-dollar phenomenon. I think that is quite accurate in terms of it accidentally spawned this multi-million-dollar phenomenon that went on for years. But him being saying it's a cynical one-off attempt, that is in itself, of course, cynical. Maybe, I mean, who knows about the intentions, but perhaps being that it took so many of the tropes from other horror movies and put them into this movie, then it kind of does make sense that you think that, and maybe it is correct. It was just a cash grab. He continues, what's striking about Friday the 13th is how little regard anyone but its fans seem to have for it. Wow. So not a lot of love for Friday the 13th among the critics. That's the thing. I didn't pick like bad ones. Like the critics generally don't like this movie because it is like derivative, like you say, a rip-off and all that. And cynical cash grab probably. And it's like you trying to do this like make a cheap buck kind of thing, and all of a sudden, oh wow, it's Friday the 13th, 28. Jason takes Santa
Manhattan.
Clara.
Oh, I get. Sorry, sorry. I don't know why I said that. That's the literal one. Yeah.
Exactly. Jason takes Santa Monica. That's what I was going to think of. That's a place in Los Angeles. But not Manhattan. He's already done Manhattan. Oh, yeah. Jason takes Queens. There you go.
Oh yeah, that'd be good. Just work his way around New York.
Jason takes Staten Island. He's a regular person there. Yeah. Right. So is it scary? Okay.
Yes.
Is it scary?
Sorry, I wasn't saying yes, it is. I was responding to your question and going like, yes, let's talk about that.
Well, it tries to be scary, and you must respect that. But too often, I was like, oh, that was decent, but I was never like really scared. When Bill's body was revealed, I think that was a missed attempt. When he's pinned to the back of the door, because it's quite easy to see like his body come round, and that wasn't a good reveal. But even if the reveal had been good, it's like I don't know how good it is, because it's just you don't. I don't know how you get scared by this killer, because you don't.
It doesn't feel like a real threat because it's
You don't know who it is, so naturally it isn't a scary. Like Michael Myers is, I guess, the boogeyman. Like that's the thing. Michael Myers is that, so you know what he's doing. And if it's just a killer, it's like, well, we don't know how threatening this person is. Like a vital part of what makes a killer scary is, of course, their look. That's why, fucking Freddy Krueger looks like he does. That's why Michael Myers wears that mask, and he's just not on normal. That's why Jason looks like he does, exactly. So you need that element of, fucking of this, of the killer being aesthetically scary, and you don't get that in this movie. So, yeah.
I mean, obviously we reviewed Scream, and of course the woman famously thinks that Jason Voorhees is the killer, and to be honest, it's kind of stupid that she wouldn't remember he's not. But at the same time, it's also true that Jason Voorhees is a memorable villain, and I think a lot of the time, actually, to be honest, if somebody has managed to avoid finding out that Mrs. Voorhees is the killer, but they know about the Friday the 13th franchise, I bet there's lots of people who, for example, haven't seen Scream, have heard a lot about the Friday the 13th franchise, and this would actually be a really big twist for them, because they'd be like, oh wow, Jason's not the killer. Like, it would be shocking to them. And in that sense, it's kind of ironic that the subsequent films have actually made it so maybe for some people this film would actually be a lot more interesting.
That's a really good point. It's like, oh, the twist at the end. Oh, I thought it was Jason, but no, it's his mother. Oh,
yeah. So they'd be getting something out of it. Yeah, that, people at the time wouldn't have even got.
Yeah, exactly. A retroactive twist, I guess. But yeah, and
broke new ground.
It did break new ground. I do think with the killer, you need the. I think if you were going to compromise on the scariness because you don't know who it is, because you don't reveal them, then you need the element of mystery, basically. If you can't see the killer, then you need the element of mystery. Like, that's the trade-off, and they don't do it. So that's the thing we talked about. We didn't really talk about it last week in Scream, but the killer's ghost face, it wasn't that scary because they were wearing a cheap Halloween costume. Like, that, it kind of looked ridiculous. But that's the trade-off. It's like, oh, it's a mystery. Who are these? Who is this killer who's just got this cheap Halloween mask?
Yeah.
And that's what makes that movie entertaining. This doesn't have it. And therefore, it's not that scary. And okay, you sacrifice the scariness for a good mystery, you don't have that either. And again, at the end, you talked about it with fucking Mrs. Voorhees getting... Alice absolutely destroys her. It's not... Is it that scary when the killer is an old woman who the last girl beats like several times in a fight, like quite convincingly? Just some old 60-year-old woman.
I mean, again, it's like an example of where you're scared if you imagine yourself in somebody else's situation, and to some extent, when you're watching this film, you can think to yourself, to be honest, I wouldn't be like, I'd fancy my odds in this situation.
I would be wiping. I'd be wiping my brow in relief. Like, oh, this is the killer, thank God.
Yeah, you got to think about it. There's like a massive killer on loose, and you're like, oh wait, it's just some old woman.
It's just, oh God, it could have been like Michael Myers, 6'4", really strong, but no, it's this fucking old woman who gets destroyed by fucking Alice. So that's the thing. It's not as scary as it could have been. But again, we talk about the Jason scare at the end. That was the best. It makes sense because it's. It makes sense given what we know about what has been said in the movie. It's unexpected as well because it is obviously supernatural to some extent.
Yes.
And the cops are there too, so you don't really expect it's like, oh, this is the end of the movie. So it is the best combo, and it's shot really well too, I will say. I did like how it was shot.
And it had some, I don't know, that sound effect was interesting. I don't know what it was. It was like...
Yeah. No, I mean, but it's really good. And
it's creepy.
Yeah, again, I wasn't scared by it.
I think, to be honest, in a way, actually...
Sorry, I just need to... I was going to say, I said I wasn't really scared by it. That sounded like me bragging before you cut me off.
Yeah.
But I wasn't scared by it, but I can see how a lot of people would be. It was really good.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, ironically, again, the fact that the rest of the film is so not scary means that it makes it more scary by comparison. It's almost like the entire film is, like, obviously before a jump scare, you have just the moment of, like, calm and, like, nothing's really wrong.
Yes.
Basically, the entirety of the film is that moment, just building up to that jump scare. You're like, oh, this isn't too scary. It's just pretty silly. People dying in obvious ways are not very threatening villain.
Yeah,
it's like it's one massive build up.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, that could do help in its favor, I guess, and how people remember the movie and if they went back and told their friends about it. So yeah, always put your scariest thing at the end. There we go. And again, it does make this movie very memorable because of that, and helped with the franchise as well, or the movies in the franchise, which of course went on to be very successful too. So let's talk about another theme, Michael. Well, another theme. The first theme we discussed, which is teen sexuality.
Yes.
And of course, we talked about this in Halloween 2. No, not just the original Halloween.
Yeah, 2. I know what you mean. Yeah. You mean Halloween as well.
Yes. So film scholar Williams views Friday the 13th as symptomatic of its era, particularly Reagan-era America, and part of a trajectory of films such as Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Race with the Devil, which exemplify a particular apocalyptic vision, moving from disclosing family contradictions to self-indulgent nihilism. Wow. Yeah.
People are self-indulgent.
Yeah, I know. So this movie is why you got to vote for Ronald Reagan in November, and hope he beats Jimmy Carter. The film's recurring use of point-of-view shots from the killer's perspective has been noted by scholars. I can't believe scholars are watching this movie, such as Philip Demer, as inherently voyeuristic. Demer regards the film as a cautionary tale that succeeds in warning against sexual impropriety, even as it fetishizes violent transgression. Again, I think it's just a case of they copied what Halloween did.
Yeah. I mean, also, actually, I have a beef about this, which is that I think it would have been better if they actually, of course, the rule, which is that if you bang, then you die, and if you're a virgin, then you're fine. I wish they would have actually had it so, like, only the people who banged died. It would have given the killer a bit more depth.
Well, that's what happens in Halloween.
Yeah.
That literally is like all the people who have sex die apart from Jamie Lee Curtis. That's an even more explicit message, and you think they should have been even more explicit and at the same time copy Halloween even more.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I think. They should have copied Halloween more.
Okay, so film critic Timothy Sherry notes in his book Teen Movies, America's Youth on Screen, that where Halloween introduced a more subtle sexual curiosity with its morbid moral lesson, films such as Friday the 13th capitalized on the reactionary aspects of teen sexuality, slaughtering wholesale those youth who designed to cross the threshold of sexual awareness. And maybe that was... You think about Halloween 1978, not in the 80s yet. This movie is in the 80s. It is in the Reagan era, so I guess that works quite well. Commenting on the film's violence and sexuality, film scholar David Hogan notes that throughout the film, teenage boys are hideously dispatched, but not with the same build-up and attention to detail that Cunningham and makeup whiz Tom Savini reserved, this is his words, for nubile young girls. I don't know why the word nubile was used, but he did.
Creepy people.
So shout out Timothy Sherry. Maybe you shared too much there. Sorry, that was a film scholar David Hogan. I apologize. He said that. Yeah. But yeah, so again, it's just like ramp it. Okay, Halloween did this, let's ramp it up even further. But at the same time, they miss out on the thematic element of Halloween because everyone, regardless if they have sex or not, dies, apart from, of course, the last girl. And the last girl was the last girl in Halloween because of the fact that she didn't have sex. So I guess it's a theme, but it's just a worse theme overall. The theme is portrayed worse in this movie, I guess. Anything else to say, Michael?
No, actually, no. Yeah, I think you basically covered it, and I kind of already said what I want to say about how I think that the thematic element didn't really integrate into the plot very well. I guess that's the word I'm going to use. So yeah, just wasn't really much to pick up on. Yeah,
because that's the thing. It would have integrated more if they only killed people who wanted sex. Like the fucking Teddy at the end, he was making sex jokes. He wanted sex. Okay, he didn't have sex, but that's clearly something that's on his mind. So he dies because of that. So that but then fucking Bill dies, who didn't seem. He was playing. I guess you're playing strip Monopoly. Does that count? Yeah. Maybe the girl who suggested it, Bill, it's like kind of like a flimsy thing. And of course the fucking camp, the guy who runs the whole camp dies as well. And he was just fucking fixing up the camp. So yeah, it doesn't really work. The gender of the villain now, Michael. So, of course, the gender of the villain is female, which is, of course, a bit different.
It's woke.
So, it's woke. Clover notes the revelation of Paula Voorhees as the killer as the most dramatic case of pulling out the gender rug in horror film history. Yeah, maybe. I mean, I don't know. Commenting on the first person point of view shots from the killer, Clover writes, "We stalk and kill a number of teenagers over the course of an hour of movie time without even knowing who we are. We are invited by conventional expectation and by glimpses of our own bodily parts, a heavily booted foot, a roughly gloved hand, to suppose we are male, but we are revealed at the film's end as a woman." Okay, that's the... Sorry.
Did you ever feel? How did you feel when you were revealed that you were a woman? When the film revealed you were a woman the whole time?
Well, the point. That is the fucking point. It's like a twist. She's just written a paragraph about how it's a twist. That you suspect it's a man, but it's actually not. It's a woman. It's like, great. That's the fucking point of the movie.
Yeah.
So that's the whole point of the twist. So yeah, that's it on the gender of the villain. Basically, it's just it's different. It's a woman, and it's unique, and it's interesting. Yeah, I guess so. There's a whole section on Wikipedia. I don't think it says anything more than that, to be honest. So, legacy. Contemporary scholars in film criticism have credited Friday the 13th for initiating the subgenre of the stalker or slasher film. Basically, yes, it's a template alongside John Carpenter's Halloween that instigated a rush of films of its type, which young people away from supervision are systematically stalked and murdered by a masked villain. I think if you take what's on the Mount Rushmore of those kind of slasher movies from the 70s and 80s, what would you say is on the Mount Rushmore?
Well, Halloween, Friday the 13th, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Nightmare on Elm Street.
That's the exact list.
Yes.
Yeah, they are the Mount Rushmore. They introduced some interesting concepts, and some may have copied off the others, particularly this movie. So I think that is it, really. Shall we conclude, Michael? You go first.
Yes. Okay. So I said at the beginning that I was thinking maybe this film was average. I could be convinced it was worse than average, but I wouldn't be convinced it was better than average. And indeed, I have been convinced it was worse than average. I was thinking possibly 4.5, or rather, a medium 4. But I've actually decided for a low 4 because I think really, film is just not that much special. The ending's like, oh wow, that's a big thing. And, maybe if I actually realize the rest of the films are okay, then I'll be, I guess it gets some credit just for introducing it. But certainly this film in itself, there's just nothing really to appreciate. It's just not very scary. And I think ultimately, while, it's kind of like the people getting stalked and killed is interesting in some instances, and, the way it's handled with the creeping camera and stuff can be sort of creepy. Ultimately, by the time you get to the end, it falls into, I think, something which a bit too many of these slasher films do, which is it just gets almost goofy because you're confronted with the fact it is just a guy, or in this case a woman, running around with a knife, trying to stab some random teenager. It's just like, I don't know, it's not really terrifying. But the ending, the final twist, genuinely, it did make me jump. So, I mean, that's not really a massive positive. It's not too hard to make somebody jump. Just be quiet for a bit and then go, bleh! But what do you think, Luke?
I think that is right. That's the only real positive. I mean, the plot is so thin. You could have introduced some more interesting concepts. You could have, made the fact that you can't see the killer, made that into a whole mystery of who it is. They don't do that. A missed opportunity. And obviously we talked about, all the horror movie tropes. The girl who is half naked goes to investigate a strange sound, and that kind of thing does get old quite quickly. It's repetitive, and if you're watching a movie, repetitiveness isn't the best aspect. That's how you describe it. It's you're not going to have a good time, basically. And without the ending, this could be extremely forgettable, and we wouldn't be reviewing this movie because it would not be considered a classic. And of course, people at the time said it was a cynical cash grab, and I guess just the success of the franchise and the fact that years basically. How long do things have to go on before? Well, it's like 10 years maybe, and then it becomes a classic.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
That's the thing. I think it's probably revered a lot more nowadays than it was back when it was released, just because it's like, it's an old classic movie that spawned this franchise, so it must be good to some extent, but it really isn't, to be honest. So I am going to, what did you give it, Michael?
I gave it a 4, the low 4.
You give it a low 4. Yeah, I'm going to give it a 3.5. I think that's fair. So what are we doing next week, Michael?
Well, we mentioned the Mount Rushmore, and we've reviewed 3 of the films on that Mount Rushmore over the past 2 years, and now we will be reviewing the 4th one, Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yes, we're going backwards in time.
Yeah,
of course, to Texas. Yeehaw.
Yes.
Okay. So, and yeah, then Spooktober's over.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Finally. It was a bit too scary for me.
I know, right? Well, look at the movies we reviewed. We gave it a 4, a 5, and a 3.5 out of 10. Well, I have, anyway.
I think I gave one of them a low 6. There we go. Yeah, as a positive.
The Spooktober has not been really spooky. I will say that. It's not been the best. Last year's Spooktober was a lot better. Yeah. And the Spooktober before that as well. That was a lot better too. But yeah, we'll, of course, review the Texas Chainsaw Massacre next week. And we have been selecting and reflecting on Friday the 13th on Wednesday the 26th of October. Join us next time for actually, you know what? I think Friday the 13th is next year. In October, yeah.
Oh yeah, that would be cool.
That'd be cool. Yeah, they should have another.
Yeah, they should release another one.
Yeah, perfect synergy. So yeah, join us next week for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Who have you been, Michael?
I've been Michael.
I've been Luke. Thanks for listening, and goodbye.
Goodbye.